If Thragg ever stepped into the Jujutsu world, he'd have no idea what just killed him. One punch from a Viltrumite can level a city block. But there's a category of power that doesn't care how strong you are. Today, we're going deep into how cursed energy users stack up against the strongest race in the universe, where they win, where they lose badly, and why the answer isn't as simple as stronger guy wins. Let's start with the baseline, because you need to understand exactly what a Viltrumite brings to the table. They're bred for war, generation after generation, on a planet that treats conquest as a birthright. Superhuman strength, superhuman speed, near total durability, and critically, all of it scales as they train in age. A young Viltrumite is dangerous. A centuries-old Viltrumite is close to unstoppable by conventional means. They regenerate from almost anything short of total bodily destruction, and normal weapons barely register. Look at Omni-Man, tearing through the entire Global Defense Agency without breaking a sweat, an organization built specifically to handle superhuman threats. Look at Thragg's history, a being who's personally wiped out entire civilizations and holds a Viltrumite empire together through sheer force and cunning. Look at Conquest, who fought Invincible and Omni-Man at the same time and still nearly won. These aren't enemies you outmuscle. You need a different kind of answer entirely. And that's exactly what cursed energy is. Here's the Viltrumite's one blind spot. Everything about them is physical. Their strength is matter hitting matter, force against force, and their durability is built to survive exactly that kind of damage. Cursed energy doesn't play by those rules at all. It's not physical force. It's a separate layer of reality, born out of human emotion, specifically negative emotion like fear, jealousy, and hatred. And the techniques built from it can bypass what a Viltrumite's body is designed to withstand. Domain expansions guarantee a hit through what's called a sure hit effect. It doesn't matter how tough your skin is, if the technique isn't actually testing your skin. Gojo's Infinity goes even further than that. It doesn't just resist damage. It can stop a physical attack from ever making contact with him in the first place, no matter how fast or how strong the attacker is. And then there's Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine, a domain with raw destructive output on a scale that simply doesn't care what species is standing inside it. So let's actually run the matchups, because this is where it gets fun. First, Gojo versus Thragg. In theory, Infinity no-sells Thragg's punches completely. They just never connect. Full stop. The real question isn't whether Thragg is strong enough. It's whether his speed and centuries of combat experience let him find some exploit, some angle Infinity hasn't accounted for, before Gojo ends things. History suggests Infinity's defense is close to absolute against anything purely physical, and Thragg, for all his brutality, is still fundamentally a physical fighter. Gojo's a favorite here, and it's not particularly close. Second, Sukuna versus Conquest. This one's genuinely harder to call. Malevolent Shrine's domain guarantees damage lands, which against most opponents ends a fight instantly. But Conquest is some of the best regeneration in the Invincible universe, built to survive exactly the kind of overwhelming punishment that would kill anyone else. So the real question becomes a race. Can Sukuna's output overwhelm that regeneration faster than Conquest can adapt and close the distance? This is the closest matchup on the list, and honestly, could go either way depending on how you weigh regeneration speed against domain damage output. Third, a mid-tier sorcerer. Someone like Nobara or Maki against a rank-and-file Viltrumite soldier, not even one of the named heavy hitters. This is where the gap turns brutal fast. Without a domain expansion or a defensive technique on Gojo's level, a mid-tier sorcerer just doesn't have an answer for raw Viltrumite strength and speed. This is a one-shot scenario almost every time. And it's exactly why tier matters so much in any conversation like this one. Fourth, let's talk about numbers, because a real war isn't a 1v1. If the coalition of planets or the Jujutsu world ever collided as full factions, sorcerer numbers and coordination start to matter more than any single hero's ceiling. A handful of mid-tier sorcerers working together, chaining domains and curse technique combos, could plausibly overwhelm a single elite Viltrumite through sheer volume, even if none of them could win the 1v1 alone. So here's the real deciding factor across every one of these matchups. It's not raw power on either side. It's whether the sorcerer has access to a domain expansion or an infinity-level defense. Viltrumites win through pure physical output. Full stop, that's their entire design. Sorcerers win by changing the rules, sidestepping the fight the Viltrumite thinks they're in. And there's one wild card worth sitting with. Viltrumites like Thragg are cunning, not just strong. If a Viltrumite empire learned cursed energy existed and had time to study it, their tactics would shift fast, and that changes every matchup on this list. So here's the verdict. Top-tier sorcerers like Gojo and Sukuna have real, workable answers for even the strongest Viltrumites. Mid-tier Viltrumites beat mid-tier sorcerers more often than not, and low-tier sorcerers lose to almost any Viltrumite that gets close enough to swing. Who do you think actually has a long-term edge here? Drop your matchup in the comments, and I'll break down the next one.